And no, the thumbnail is not bait. Well, maybe a little bit, because obviously Subaru is not being haunted in the modern world. But you get what I mean.
Things have gotten very complicated for the protagonist, and it also looks like we are about to find out who might be the one tasked with hunting Subaru down. Plus, there were some interesting reveals about Melty. That and other matters in this brief analysis. But as always, a huge thank you to the channel members. Thanks to Leo, Nathaniel, Ian, Joss, Merlon, Delta, and finally to Fur, who seems to have joined when I was working on my thesis, which is why I couldn't greet them back then. Also, please remember that if I haven't greeted you, it's because greetings are a benefit reserved for the channel's highest tier. As for my English channel, thanks to Juan, who just joined. Also, thanks to the guy who sent me a donation through PayPal, I really appreciate it, and I assure you that the money will go toward the editor. Now let's get started. Welcome to the analysis of Arc 10, Chapter 22 of ReZero. The chapter starts from the point of view of the group of fugitives led by Otto. There is a sweet moment between Otto and Garfield, where Garfield tries to understand the situation even though he struggles. But Otto feels the same way, or maybe he carries an even bigger burden. This is because now he has to be very careful when using his power, since if he uses it badly, he could be tricked again and led into another trap, just like the encounter against Reinhard. We are told that they are taking a rest at Conwood's Tavern. I know you probably don't remember the old man, but he has actually appeared in the anime. He showed up exactly in the first season thanking Subaru, and he also helped Teresia in the first attempt to defeat the White Whale, where she lost her life, and he was present at several important milestones in Lugunica's history. In fact, I made a short about his life, and I'll ask you to watch it later. When you watch the short, you will understand that Conwood feels he owes a lot to Wilhelm for all the times he and his wife saved his life during the war, which is why when Wilhelm thanks him today for helping him, Conwood tells him there's no need to thank him, for obvious reasons. I think the most interesting part is that when Wilhelm reunites with the friends from his youth, it feels like his self from those days temporarily returns. I don't just say this because of his lack of understanding as to why Conwood is grateful to him, but because Rahm is also present there now, who used to go by the name Valga Cromwell and was his sworn enemy in the past. Today's episode was funny because both old men were constantly throwing jabs at each other. Valga really makes Wilhelm temporarily go back to his teenage self and makes the old swordsman act sarcastic just like old times. In fact, at one point, they reference the events of EX2 where Wilhelm and Valga fought to the death, and right when it looked like they were going to fight again, Rem had to step in. It is clarified that Otto knows and has already figured out Valga Cromwell's identity, but he still thanks him for sending Wilhelm to help them. And now that I think about it, I hope the next volume of the main novel comes with a side story narrating Wilhelm's perspective since he left the castle and how he reunited with Conwood and Rahm. Honestly, I think it would be interesting to see, and at the same time, it would be the most likely option. This is because in the Tanpenshu collection, the book that compiles the most important side stories of the series, they already covered Rahm's reunion with Wilhelm's other childhood friends, Carol and Grimm. And if they've already covered Valga's reunion with Wilhelm's friends, it would be weird not to have a novel narrating this moment, but with the main protagonist of the demi-human war novels. Afterward, the novel gives both Valga and Wilhelm the chance to tell how they ended up in this situation, but they do it in a very summarized way, which is why I keep saying they should release it in a side novel format. But among other things revealed, while I was editing this, the author just published episode 23, and unfortunately, I've made the decision to just write the script and put gameplay in the background for what follows. I know many people don't like this, but not only do I need to speed things up, but these types of videos do better the sooner I release them. So I'm not asking you to agree with me unconditionally, but please keep this in mind before commenting, and I'll leave it to your conscience to decide what kind of comment you want to leave if you choose to do so. I'm warning you that everything coming up now will have no editing. Crush's father, Lord Meckart, is mentioned, who is a recurring character in Crush's novels. Even though he isn't someone particularly strong or sharp-witted, I'd still like him to appear soon. After all, we are in his daughter's arc. Another thing revealed is that Wilhelm tried to plead for Crush before his former captain, Bordeaux, but it's said that not only did he fail, but the castle apparently sent knights after him. It's said that right in the middle of his escape, he ran into Rahm, who appeared before his eyes in broad daylight. Wilhelm saw him and couldn't believe what he was looking at. Honestly, I have to admit I was quite surprised to learn that it was Rahm who looked for him. I thought they had crossed paths at Conwood's Tavern or something like that, but no. It seems Rahm was so desperate to help and save his adopted granddaughter Felt that he didn't care about using his contacts from his old criminal life just to be of help to the candidate. But before moving on, I think it's necessary to quote one of my shorts, because it relates to something that will be explained soon. Did you know that, just as Amelia once dreamed of the tale of Alice in Wonderland, Felt is also tormented by a strange and recurring dream? However, unlike Amelia, Felt has experienced this for as long as she can remember, unaware that, in reality, it is her oldest and most painful memory. In the dream, she isn't the thief we know, but a baby. She is trapped in a small box, staring up at an immensely high ceiling, unable to move. Suddenly, she hears two voices discussing her fate. One feels familiar but is filled with disgust. The other is unknown, yet charged with an affection so deep it breaks her heart. The loving voice admits he is secretly giving away his own daughter, confessing that if his brother or his wife found out, they would never allow it. The other voice, the one that sounds disgusted, accepted the job solely to settle an old debt. It is then that the loving man peeks into the box. Although his face is obscured by shadows, Felt distinguishes two unmistakable traits: golden hair and red eyes, the absolute trademark of the Lagunica royal family. The man lifts her from the box with infinite gentleness. As he rocks her, his voice trembles as he whispers how fast she has grown, lamenting that the day will come when his arms will no longer be enough to hold her. In that dream, little Felt can feel the man's heartbeat, a sound that brings her peace and the urge to cry all at the same time. But that peace is shattered instantly when she is handed over to different arms. Huge, calloused, rough hands hold her crudely. This is where we recognize Old Man Rahm, or rather, Valga Cromwell. The giant looks down at her with disdain, bitterly lamenting how low he has fallen. The greatest human killer of the last war is now forced to save the most important family of the race he swore to exterminate. Little Felt senses that hatred and is terrified. She tries to scream, wanting to return to the warmth of the red-eyed man, but it is useless. The giant begins to walk, carrying her into the darkness, far away from her father. As they drift away, the last thing she hears from the golden-haired man isn't an apology. It is a final promise. "I love you, forever and ever." Those were the last words her father spoke to her before vanishing from her life. This dream confirms that Felt's famous kidnapping, the event that shook the kingdom 14 years ago and caused Teresia's death along with the dissolution of the royal guard led by Wilhelm, was not a crime. It was a desperate act of love. Her father, Ford Lagunica, gave her away to save her from the mysterious disease that was annihilating the entire royal lineage. Things at the palace were so dire due to the royal plague that he had to entrust his daughter to the reformed criminal Valga Cromwell. And Valga, despite his hatred for humanity, kept his promise. Ironically, raising that human girl was the only thing that managed to erase the resentment he still harbored in his heart toward humans. It is because we have this background of Rahm kidnapping Felt that in today's episode, the old man seems to be hiding information. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but it's not clear to me if he's hiding info because he doesn't want it to slip out that it was actually Felt's father who asked to have Felt kidnapped, or because the presence of his old enemy makes him uncomfortable. I think it's a bit of both. After all, Wilhelm almost killed Rahm in the past, and besides, there is one thing they can still fight to the death over all over again. I'm talking about the incident from 15 years ago where the princess was kidnapped, and the kingdom tasked Wilhelm with finding her. But what nobody knows is that the king himself tasked Rahm with kidnapping the newborn princess. I wonder how Wilhelm will feel when he finds out it was his old enemy who was behind everything. I know they might explain it to him, but I highly doubt Wilhelm would be willing to believe him because of the lingering hatred between them. In fact, in an alternate story where Rahm and Wilhelm meet in episode 1 of the anime, they talk to each other with pure hatred, so things are very tense between them right now. And now that I think about it, later in the chapter, it's mentioned that both Russell's group and Otto's group will leave the capital. I think it would be a good time for them to retreat either to Priscilla's territory where Roswell is, or to Felt's territory, a place where, even though there isn't anyone major, it could serve as a defensive stronghold due to the alliances the candidate has with the underworld criminal organizations over there, which we saw in Arc 9. Still, I think it would be more interesting if they went to where Roswell is. Though I'd ask for Carol and Grimm to show up soon too. It's just not right that all of the most important friends from Wilhelm's youth don't get together. Afterward, Otto, Wilhelm, and Valga recap everything that happened, and they comment on something I was talking about a few episodes ago. They talk about how this conspiracy also aims to get Anastasia out of the way, so as soon as she gets back from Kararagi, the kingdom will go after her too. Besides, It's not like Anna is just doing nothing, she is currently dealing with Zarestia. But as I always say, that's a story you don't know. Something that did catch my attention is how Rem seems to remember Priscilla with affection. She holds her in such high regard that as soon as Otto suggests the kingdom might use her death to disqualify Anastasia, the maid gets fiercely angry and says that just that suggestion could bring conflict to the kingdom. But honestly, I doubt that will happen, not because Vincent wouldn't defend his sister's memory, but because he is busy rebuilding his country, and I feel like we've already spent way too much time in the Empire anyway. Let's just wait and see what happens. Next, while Otto, along with Wilhelm and Rahm, agree that they need to leave the capital for now, Garfield mentions something interesting to show his disagreement, but I think the most important thing the boy mentions is a reference to Godogi Guadoziato, a very powerful great spirit from Gusteko. Could this be a future hint revealing that we are going to Gusteko? I doubt it, because the author so far seems to have no intention of including Gusteko in the main story, but hopefully he changes his mind. After this, Wilhelm asks Valga if he can find Subaru or Crush using his connections, but Valga tells him no. This surprised me a bit because I thought he did have contact with them, but if we remember correctly, the three idiots received the order to look for Subaru from Felt, not from Rahm, so it makes sense that Rahm isn't aware of their situation. And speaking of which, where are Camberley and Gaston? Hopefully they are okay. I know they aren't the most reliable backup, but the more hands Subaru has, the better. Later, since Rem still wasn't convinced by the plan because she knew Subaru would surely do something reckless, Wilhelm takes it upon himself to convince her with a speech where he highlights the greatness and wit of Subaru and Crush. But the most curious part doesn't end there. After convincing Rem, Garfield tells Wilhelm that he just gave a speech that Subaru himself would have said, to which Wilhelm takes that praise as a huge compliment. Then, to boost morale, Otto gives a speech about how leaving the capital is just a temporary retreat to secure victory. I liked this, not only because it's something the Emperor also decided when his empire's capital was taken by the enemy, but because it reveals the reason why he doesn't want to rely too much on Subaru, and it's a very beautiful reason that deserves for you to hear it yourself.
Among the faces nodding around him, Garfield rubbed his nose with a finger, a gesture that made Otto raise his voice in response. Then, after returning Rem's nod, Otto turned his attention beyond the walls, looking straight toward the royal capital. He had absolutely no idea where they were at that moment. Even so, he could not stop himself from thinking about Subaru and Beatrice, who he believed were probably struggling and fighting their way through a dead end somewhere in that same royal capital, trapped in a situation just like the one Otto and the others were facing. The anxiety he felt was endless because, just as Rem had pointed out moments ago, Subaru would without a doubt do something reckless. Deep down, Otto desperately wished that would not happen, but even knowing that his quiet murmur would never reach him, he still let out a resigned whisper, accepting that Subaru would probably go and do something dangerous anyway. As he let the walls swallow his words, Otto pulled his hat firmly down over his eyes. He knew very well, almost to an unhealthy degree, that when it came to answering someone's expectations or wishes, a person like Natsuki Subaru would throw both his life and his heart onto the scale without a second thought. That was exactly why Otto believed that, if possible, they neither wanted nor should rely on him. He could not help feeling that treating Natsuki Subaru as the person who would solve everything, the way everyone else did, was unfairly taking advantage of both his kindness and his weakness. Because of that, and at least for that reason, Otto bitterly resolved that even while separated by distance, they would do everything necessary to endure such absurdity and injustice, all to make sure that recklessness would not completely consume Natsuki Subaru, and to prevent him from being crushed beneath the weight of his own self-sacrifice.
The best part of this introspection from Otto is that it's a continuation of the feelings he voiced in the Empire arc regarding his friendship with Subaru and how hard it can be to deal with the protagonist due to his kind nature, where he always wants to help his allies. In fact, I remember it was this reflection that made him temporarily fight Julius back then, and as I said, I like that the author hasn't forgotten that side of Otto. But that would be all for the side of the fugitives led by Otto. Now let's go with Subaru. Coincidentally, right while Otto was thinking about this, Subaru sneezed. I remember that in Japan, this is interpreted as someone talking about you at that exact moment, which makes you sneeze. It is at this point that Russell confesses something important to Subaru, something that confirms how dangerous Capella is. Capella showed herself during the Priestella incident just so they would have a description of her. That way, knowing the kingdom would try to hunt her down, the Archbishop would send imposters of herself to different parts of the country to keep Russell's secret organization busy. Honestly, this move makes us realize that Capella might be crazy, but she isn't an idiot. To tell you the truth, up until now, I held a small hope that the Archbishop was just a piece of shit crazy person, but now I see that's not the case. Afterward, something funny happens when Subaru notices his burn has been completely healed. Then Russell, who goes by the nickname Silver Fox in his group, reveals that Subaru was healed by a subordinate of his who is skilled with healing magic, and he calls this subordinate by the nickname Blue Snake. I'll tell you right now that he was probably talking about Felix. After all, there is proof that he had already met up with him a day ago. Though I think the most curious part here is the nickname supposedly given to Felix. This nickname has the name Blue, because that is exactly the attribute magic he has the most affinity with, and he has the nickname Snake, maybe, because Felix feels like a traitor for failing the expectations of his former lady, Crush. Next, something happened that I honestly feel was a missed opportunity by the author. You see, in the next scene, we see Rachen's worried about his father, and Subaru tells him he understands how delicate family can be. Now that Rachens was worried about his father, it would have been great if Subaru also remembered his own parents. Hopefully, when they rewrite this version for the light novel, they make a mention of the protagonist's parents. Later, Wolf arrives and brings them robes that have a spell that helps hide their identity. In fact, the clothes Amelia wore in episode 1 of the first season also had that enchantment, which is why people didn't react to her half-elf features. But getting back to today's events, it's said that when Russell gives the order to leave the capital because the area is too dangerous for them now, Subaru was hesitant because obviously he didn't want to leave Amelia alone. But then Russell calls Melty, who proceeds to grab both of Subaru's hands and asks him to trust her. For some reason, Subaru is moved by this, and after hearing from Russell himself that he has helpers inside the castle keeping an eye on Amelia, he agrees to retreat soon. Then everyone leaves the room, but the last one out is Wolf, who says something interesting, something that helps us better understand this final moment. He wishes death upon someone. And as I always say, the episode ended, but the speculation can still continue. First of all, I must clarify that I really hope the main friends from Wilhelm's side stories get together to help in this crisis. I highly doubt Conwood will go with them, but maybe, and I really hope it happens, maybe Carol and Grimm can join. If I remember correctly, Tapei said Wilhelm has distanced himself and separated from them, so it would be good if in this moment of crisis and need, they became a group of friends again, just like they were in the past. I mean, Wilhelm was already able to talk to Conwood again, someone he had also distanced himself from when he started his revenge against the White Whale. Next, I highly doubt the escape of Otto and Subaru's group will be peaceful. While it was already said that Subaru's group has cloaks that block enemy recognition, it's also true that if the user is skilled or strong enough, they can ignore this effect of the magic cloak. For example, Wilhelm, when he met Amelia for the first time, recognized her even though she was under that effect. Plus, Tiga in the game had a divine protection that made him immune to illusions. So if I had to make a prediction, I'd say Tiga will be tasked with hunting down Subaru's group, precisely because he has the means to do it. In fact, this escape they are making from the city reminds me of when Subaru had to escape the city of Gural while being hunted by Todd, so I'd like to see many loops of Subaru trying to escape. And if my prediction comes true that maybe they'll release a side novel taking place at the same time as Volume 45, I wouldn't mind if the novel covers the point of view of Otto's group leaving the city. Next, another thing that was also interesting, but maybe went unnoticed, is how Melty ends up using her power that controls people on Subaru. At least that's what is implied when she grabs Subaru's hands, and after giving him a short speech, he says that for some reason, he decided to agree to her request. In the game, The Prophecy of the Throne, it is told how she constantly made sure to touch other people to put them under her power. In fact, if we assume this is true, because remember, this is just a speculation of mine, that would explain why Wolf got bitter at the end and insulted someone. That insult would be directed at Russell, who made his precious little sister use the power she hates so much. I don't know if Tapei will decide to keep making it canon that Melty hates her power, but I imagine so. In Melty's game story, it is told how she hates her power because it doesn't allow her to get genuine relationships, so if this stays, that would explain why Wolf curses Russell. He curses him because he forces his sister to do things she doesn't want to do. The other possible explanation for Wolf's anger is that it might have to do with his other personality. You see, Wolf is a person who has two personalities. When he has the mask and the outfit on, he is Wolf. But when he isn't wearing those clothes, he is Salem, someone who is very quiet and reserved. In the game, both personalities didn't get along with each other. In fact, if I remember correctly, Wolf had tried to suppress Salem forever, so he might have set it to his other personality, but I don't know. Something that would seem interesting to me is if one of these two personalities is still loyal to Capella, and I think that would be an interesting twist, but we'll see. Anyway, remember that this last part is just my guess. I don't necessarily have to be right. But that has been all for today. Thanks for joining me in the review of this episode, and I hope you can join me in the next one too. See ya. In fact, this escape they are making from the city reminds me of when Subaru had to escape the city of Gural while being hunted by Todd, so I'd like to see many loops of Subaru trying to escape. And if my prediction comes true that maybe they'll release a side novel taking place at the same time as Volume 45, I wouldn't mind if the novel covers the point of view of Otto's group leaving the city. Next, another thing that was also interesting but maybe went unnoticed is how Melty ends up using her power that controls people on Subaru. At least that's what is implied when she grabs Subaru's hands, and after giving him a short speech, he says that for some reason, he decided to agree to her request. In the game, The Prophecy of the Throne, it is told how she constantly made sure to touch other people to put them under her power. In fact, if we assume this is true, because remember, this is just a speculation of mine, that would explain why Wolf got bitter at the end and insulted someone. That insult would be directed at Russell, who made his precious little sister use the power she hates so much. I don't know if Taipei will decide to keep making it canon that Melty hates her power, but I imagine so. In Melty's game story, it is told how she hates her power because it doesn't allow her to get genuine relationships, so if this stays, that would explain why Wolf curses Russell. He curses him because he forces his sister to do things she doesn't want to do. The other possible explanation for Wolf's anger is that it might have to do with his other personality. You see, Wolf is a person who has two personalities. When he has the mask and the outfit on, he is Wolf, but when he isn't wearing those clothes, he is Salem, someone who is very quiet and reserved. In the game, both personalities didn't get along with each other. In fact, if I remember correctly, Wolf had tried to suppress Salem forever, so he might have said it to his other personality, but I don't know. Something that would seem interesting to me is if one of these two personalities is still loyal to Capella, and I think that would be an interesting twist, but we'll see. Anyway, remember that this last part is just my guess. I don't necessarily have to be right, and that's how episode 22 ended. But as we know, episode 23 has already started. Even though it was a transition episode, it revealed interesting things we can speculate about. The episode starts with Subaru and his companions in one of the warehouses located on the outskirts of the commercial district, which means the explosion from their fight against Clarissa really sent them far away, since they were previously in another district, the Noble District. It's also said that this place, which was described as a small hideout, was actually one of the largest warehouses in the area. How ironic. Something I forgot to mention is that when Subaru thought about Rem, he said that she probably wasn't worried about him, unlike Petra. I've seen that this bothered some fans, but I just have to say that I don't know why they're surprised. Subaru thinks she doesn't get along with him, but the reality is that Rem cares a lot about him. It's just that she still finds it hard to say how she feels. And while everything would be fixed with just one night of talking between them, in reality, since the events of the Empire arc, they haven't been able to sit down and talk calmly. And I remind you that Rem didn't want to let Subaru go to the Watchtower alone. If Subaru went without her, it was only because of the loops Aldebaran made to push her away. Obviously, I'm not saying this relationship is great or peak. I'm just saying that at this moment, more important things are happening than love. But they still care about each other, and just need to sit down and have the talk they promised each other in Arc 8. The talk where Subaru would help her clear up those feelings she feels. The amnesiac Rem, when she sees him talking to Amelia. Again, I'm not saying Subaru and amnesiac Rem's relationship is a healthy one. I don't think any relationship in ReZero is, except for Carol and Grimm's. But that, as I always say, is a story you don't know. Returning to today's topic, a little detail that was mentioned about the Six Tongues that I loved is the fact that Russell is having his contacts spread fake information about his whereabouts to throw his pursuers off the scent. This isn't a huge deal, but I feel like it makes us as viewers understand that this secret organization is serious and that it's not in your best interest to become their enemy. Then an important scene would happen, a scene that I feel isn't talked about very much, when Melty approaches them. Subaru is kind to her and tells her not to be formal with him. I know some people might think that was unintentionally flirtatious and that Melty got nervous like Crush does in fan art with Subaru. But I don't think so. You see, there comes a point in the conversation where she was going to mention something to Subaru. Something that starts with the word T. Unfortunately, the moment is interrupted by Rachins. But it seems like Melty wanted to talk to Subaru about Tiga, Subaru's old friend. Even though by this point, many of the things revealed in the video game are no longer canon in the main story, we have seen that certain things like the characters' pasts or powers remain canon. What am I getting at? That even though Melty and Salem managed to escape Capella's control, that doesn't mean that if they had a group during their time with Capella, that the whole group managed to escape the Archbishop with them. I say this because I think the past of Melty and Tiga in the game is still canon. In the game, it isn't made clear exactly when Melty met Capella, but it is made clear that Tiga already knew about the threat the Archbishop posed to her and cooperated begrudgingly because he loved Melty. So, I don't think it's crazy to believe that on the day Melty escaped with Salem, Tiga couldn't escape for some reason we still don't know, and he had to stay behind and continue serving Capella. It's because of this possible past that I am theorizing, and I repeat, this is just a theory, don't take it as something official, that Melty knows Tiga and today wanted to ask Subaru about him, but the blockhead Rashins interrupted the moment. Personally, I would like Melty and Tiga to end up together, just like they did in the game. Their story is certainly moving, and if I'm right with my theory, the main novel could make their story even more beautiful if Teppei plays his narrative cards right. After this, it would be the moment Subaru meets the healer Seija, who was carrying a heavy box with difficulty, and Subaru intervenes to help him. Seija just thanks him and leaves. Obviously, we already know that Seija is Felix, and as I said in my previous video, it could be deduced by the nickname he gave himself. And now that I think about it, what nicknames will Subaru, Betty, and Crush use in their life as criminals? I'm not a fan of the Subaru and Crush ship, but I won't deny that it would be fun and cool if these three pretended to be a married couple, but we'll see. Then when they set off toward the city entrance, Russell explains how the cloak works. In short, he says that it only lowers the attention cast on the user a little bit, and you shouldn't think of this trick as something foolproof. Then, to calm the protagonist down, Russell tells him not to worry about the people of the kingdom, since even though they are leaving, he still has people in the capital providing counterintelligence services. Then he mentions again that Crush is doing well, and that she was treated by the best healer he has, Seija. Afterward, when they arrive at the checkpoint, I really liked how the author wrote this part. First of all, the author made a reference to how things were at the end of Arc 7, where the Empire's capital was in a major crisis and people rushed to get out of the city. Subaru thinks that the kingdom is in that exact same situation right now, and perhaps sensing the anxiety in Subaru, Russell reminds him that he must make the best decision even if it's painful. Honestly, this perspective of Russell's is very similar to Roswell's obsession with the gospel. It's not that Russell also has one, but I say it in the sense that both are men who are truly committed to their goals. And just like Roswell was willing to sacrifice the entire sanctuary for the sake of his goal, I'm sure Russell would also be willing to sacrifice certain people of the kingdom if it meant saving the nation. Obviously, this thing I'm saying about Russell sacrificing people is a guess, but it's a guess that will probably be true due to something we'll see soon. Another thing I'm really looking forward to is the moment when Russell sees he can't control Subaru because of how unpredictable and good-hearted he is. If Roswell and the Emperor himself had problems with Subaru, I'm sure the leader of the Six Tongues will discover this soon. And I'm certain this will end up resulting in an interesting subplot, since the same thing happened with Roswell and Vincent back then. Afterward, even though Melty put the guard under her control, that didn't help them get through, and when they were about to conduct an inspection, Russell makes a gesture to Subaru, and it's said that instantly a loud accident happens in the distance. Subaru tried to go, but Melty convinces him to stay with her power. However, seeing Seija run without hesitating, Subaru reacts and decides to follow him, but not before apologizing to Russell. Then, once he gets there, he discovers it's Felix, and the episode ends there. And here is where I want to comment on something. You see, Russell told Subaru that he had a countermeasure ready in case the worst happened. And what a coincidence that right after giving the signal, an accident happens in the back. If Russell was really the one who set that trap, he must be very annoyed about how Subaru is going to go fix a self-provoked accident. And on top of that, this fact will eventually end up exposing them. After all, rumors of a very talented healer and a knight with a little girl are things I doubt will go unnoticed. Either way, I feel that this tactic of Russell's to bend Subaru to his will with Melty will eventually make Subaru explode at him. It happened with Roswell and Vincent. Even though Subaru never hit Roswell before the end of Arc 4, it's said that he wasn't lacking the desire to, and he did end up hitting Vincent. I'm aware that the circumstances with the Margrave and the Emperor were different, but in the end, those were things that ended up making Subaru angry, and that's why he hit them both. I just hope that if the author follows the same path here, he manages to create a unique conflict and relationship between Subaru and Russell. Although I think this conflict would be easily fixed if Roswell came and told Russell to let Subaru do whatever he wants. I know I said Russell was a complicated man, but if the advice comes from Roswell, I'm sure he would listen to his words. Also, another thing that catches my attention is the apparent nerf Melty received to her power. Some people say this because Subaru was able, to a certain extent, to resist and go against what Melty ordered, but I don't see it that way. I think her power is actually just as broken as ever. I know they argue this because in the game we never saw a character go against Melty's wishes, and here in the main novel we've already seen that Subaru could break it. The truth is, I don't think anything has been shown that contradicts that Melty's power is weaker in this version. You see, in the game, it's said and shown that when Melty controls someone, it's not that the person loses their will or mind and becomes her unconditional puppet, but rather that the individual retains their way of being and will, but cannot avoid leaning toward Melty's desires. In fact, in the game, Melty takes Subaru's hand so he won't suspect her, and Subaru falls for her plan. But it wasn't until there was an external stimulus that he realized how strange it was that he had yielded to her. The same thing happened today. The guard who was controlled by her couldn't yield to her demands, not because Melty's power was insufficient, but because his superior came and canceled his action. The same happened with the protagonist. Subaru had already fallen to Melty's power, but upon seeing your favorite femboy going toward the wounded, he regained his composure and went back to being his usual self. It is because of these details that I believe Melty's power is still just as strong as it was in the game. Even so, let's wait and see what else happens, although unfortunately, the author might soon take a break, because he has almost met the number of chapters required to finish Volume 45, which is the next volume to be released. And also, the anime will soon go on a break, but don't worry, I still plan to cover ReZero for a while longer. I'm aware that I owe you the Elsa video, the EX1 video, and the cut content videos for the first seasons, so I still have plenty of time left in this fandom. Either way, I'm sorry if the lack of editing made your experience uncomfortable, but because of the speed with which the last 2 episodes were released, it was necessary for me to speed things up. See ya.